I've discussed some pretty heavy topics so far, so I would like to take a bit of a step back and do a bit of a lightning round of smaller topics, or a medley, because I'm not really going to rush it as lightning might imply, and take this as an opportunity to vent a little bit, have a rant on some issues, express my theories, observations, and maybe have a little bit of fun too. Maybe. My first topic, starting in no particular order, is a two-parter about ASMR. Part 1 is the theory. I believe most people who are even aware of ASMR don't actually understand what it is. It's not relaxing or pleasant sounds or strange role plays. Those are methods of triggering ASMR, which is a physiological response. ASMR is a tingling sensation felt in your scalp that accompanies an intense feeling of relaxation, which is associated with feelings of safety, personal attention, and being cared for. We don't know exactly what it is because it's not scientific, it hasn't been studied. ASMR stands for Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response. Meridian refers to your chakras, which is pseudoscience. The reason it hasn't been studied relates to my theory of what it is. I think everybody experiences ASMR in their life, although it almost entirely occurs when we are babies and young toddlers, and it usually stops before we're old enough to form memories of it. For a minority of people, they experience it long enough to form memories and awareness of it, but if you spoke about it, it was usually only other kids who knew what you were talking about. It was only with the advent of the internet that there was enough people aware of it for a community to form around it. In the early days of the internet, if you did a search for tingling sensation in the scalp, the only results you would get would be a diagnosis of dandruff or cancer. ASMR was just a name given to an unknown phenomena. My theory is that it is an evolutionary way of developing social bonds with other people. The focused attention makes us feel really good. We experience ASMR and we imprint on our caregivers, which is vital for our survival in our infancy. The sensation is probably similar to what animals feel when we pet them on the head. If you imagine being a baby, you're lying on the floor with your mother hovering over you. She is lavishing you with love and affection, giving you focused personal attention that makes you feel safe and cared for. She speaks softly to you, but you don't understand the words she's saying because you're a baby. It sounds like unintelligible gibberish or a foreign language. She shows you toys that have different sounds and textures. These are all triggers for ASMR. We all experience it, but most never remember it, which means there is no awareness of it to warrant scientific investigation. I believe most ASMR content creators don't even know what it is. They're just replicating what they see other people doing, which leads me to part 2. OnlyFans girls have ruined ASMR. Now, I have no issue with women having OnlyFans accounts. Sex work is real work. My problem is that they've sexualized something they shouldn't have. It would be like sexualizing Miss Rachel. Yes, I know, Rule 34, it's going to happen. The issue is that they've sexualized something before it was understood what it was. The intimacy of personal attention was confused with sexual attraction, and now we might never know what it is because it's just dismissed as a fetish. These women do girlfriend or flirty role plays to build audiences of lonely men that they can then monetize through OnlyFans porn. The problem is not just that it warps perceptions of what ASMR is, it's also that taking that easier route of selling sex to make money makes it much more difficult for other women who don't want to do that. They may want to do legitimate content creation, but will now get harassed to do porn because you set the precedent. Yes, there will always be losers that demand nudes from women online, but you've normalized the expectation of getting results from it through the exchange of money. I personally don't experience the sensation of ASMR anymore. I haven't for a very long time. But I do enjoy ASMR content because I suffer from insomnia and the relaxing content helps me to fall asleep. But I don't explore new content creators anymore. I have a handful of OG legacy channels that I watch, and that's it. The genre got ruined. The next topic is my theory on the meaning of a meme. I think 6'7" is about boobs. When I first heard about kids saying 6'7" as a meme, I thought it was maybe like a binary joke, that their brains are so shaped by digital technology that they were essentially joking like 01, 01, 01. But having seen kids doing it, I realized that was wrong. It's not just the numbers, there's an action that goes with it and a behavior that I've noticed. They behave like they're saying something vulgar and they're getting away with it because adults don't know what it means. There's a hand gesture that goes with it, which looks like imitating holding boobs, like they're judging a woman's breasts, presumably on a scale out of 10. If 10 is perfect, then a 6 or 7 is still nice tits. And that's my theory. 6'7" means nice tits, or thereabouts. I could be wrong about this, but I've never seen 6'7" said to a man. While I'm out here ruining everyone's fun, I believe anime normalizes pedophilia, which is something I first heard when I was a teenager and liked anime, and I thought that it was ridiculous. In hindsight, seeing how the genre has developed, I absolutely see it now. There are extreme examples like a lolly or loli, however it's pronounced. It's literally the abbreviation of Lolita. These are characters that look like young children but have some law reason that makes it okay to sexualize them. She's not really a toddler, she's actually a 3,000-year-old demon, so it's okay. No, it's pedophilia. Even the martyr shows tend to revolve around school-aged kids. For some reason, the mecha pilots are all teenage girls. And the characters almost always look the same, and they have the high-pitched, squeaky girl voices. It's one thing for teenagers to enjoy this stuff, but there are weebs my age that thirst over these characters. It's gross. Now, this isn't all anime, but you don't see this kind of stuff in other mainstream genres. I think anime was once an avenue of introducing adult themes to a teenage audience. It now just looks like a way for adults to sexualize kids. I do have some political takes that I will get to, but for now I'm going to keep topics more general. The next topic I'm not quite sure how to broach because it has to do with beauty standards for women. And my opinion on the subject may be unwanted, but if men are going to get the blame for setting those beauty standards, then our perspective is relevant. I personally don't really care for makeup. I recognize that it can make women look and feel beautiful though, and that can feel empowering. There are things makeup can do that are like attractiveness cheat codes. I just think it's a bit overused and sometimes overdone. But what I really don't like is the expectation for women to wear it. There are women not comfortable leaving their own homes without makeup on. I know some women can look pale and sickly without it, and that's typically because makeup blocks your skin from getting sunlight. It's a self-perpetuating problem. I'm also aware that there are men who have started wearing makeup. That's not something I have any interest in. I don't really have any issue with it either, but it's not something I want to normalize. Not for any toxic be a man reasons, but because I would rather normalize women not having the expectation to wear makeup. That's not something I can do as a male, and men wearing makeup doesn't lessen the obligation on women, it only further solidifies it. All I can do is express an opinion. Much more concerning than that is the casualness surrounding cosmetic surgeries and the extent of the change that people are undergoing. A little bit of makeup just to accentuate what you have is one thing, but when you have things like fake eyelashes and fake freckles, you don't even really look like yourself anymore. Add to that lip fillers, botoxed brows, buccal fat removal, and you don't even look human. Who does that appeal to? Inevitably, there's the response, I do that for myself. Really? Is that really what you want to look like? Well, more power to you, I guess. I'd consider the why though. Could it be from the societal expectations of enhanced beauty? Again, this is not my place to change it, I'm just expressing an opinion. If women want to normalize not having to wear makeup, you'll have my support. Show some love for your real face. Wear sunscreen if you go outside. And in case you think I'm being overly focused on criticizing women, the whole alpha male, beta male concept is bullshit and you're a fool if you believe it. Firstly, the research it was based on was regarding wolves, not humans. And not just wolves, but specifically wolves in captivity, in zoos. It's not how they behave in nature, it's how they behave when they're put in a cage. In nature, they live in packs that are family units. In captivity, they are put in cages with wolves from other packs for the sake of genetic diversity. When put in a cage with strangers, they fight for dominance. The original author has discredited his own work because of this limitation, yet there are still men who model themselves on the behavior of caged animals, which really says a lot about them. Next topic, swearing. I have no issue with swearing, I swear myself. There are times and places where it's not appropriate, but that's not my issue. What I want to talk about is the choice of words that people use. The curse words or slurs that you use can say more about the person, people, or circumstances in which you use them. Fuck, shit, ass, they're all pretty standard and general use. It's the more specific ones that give you away. One word I've noticed a recent uptick in use is retard. There's a history behind that word and a reason why people stopped saying it. It now gets thrown around like the original targets of it no longer exist or won't be genuinely upset by hearing it. If you use that word, what does that say about you and your values? If you casually throw around the word bitch, what does that say about your attitudes towards women? Or the N word, a word so offensive I can't even say it, not that I have any desire to. Yet African Americans will use it in the lyrics to their music, which is meant to be sung along to. Do you think other races use their own racial slur in their songs? Does K-pop use the G word? No, because that would only encourage its use. The words we use matter. They reflect our values. And the worst of those values will never go away if you don't stop saying the words that represent them. Now, this isn't a call for censorship, it's just to remind people that sometimes they're saying more than they realize. And then there's algo speak, where people are actually censoring themselves so that the algorithms don't bury their content, which occurs on controversial topics to protect the advertisers. Trump graped children because he's a PDF file, and some of those children unalived themselves. It really diminishes the gravity of what you're saying, which is exactly the point of allowing it. The words we use matter. Language can reveal hidden intentions, but it can also be used to distort reality and hide true meanings. The next topic, I wasn't sure if I should bring it up, not for being too controversial, but because some people might think it's not anymore. It's mental health stigmas. It's not just about the stigmas surrounding specific conditions, but the psychological effects on society more generally. Back when the R slur was the technical term, parents would avoid getting a diagnosis for their child for fear that they would get that label. Families would abandon children with special needs. The stigmas had broader societal effects. While we have made progress over time, it also feels like at other times no progress has been made at all. An example of which is applying for government support in the difference between getting help for a physical disability versus a mental one. Invisible disabilities are much easier to dismiss. They don't take something like depression seriously unless you claim you're actively planning suicide every day. Not just thinking about it, having ideation, but actively planning it, which forces people who are suffering to play a balancing act between saying just enough to get help, but not so much that they get institutionalized. And we know about the psychological effects that policy choices have on people. We learned about the effects of isolation during the COVID-era lockdowns. Yet governments seemingly refuse to acknowledge the psychological effects that their actions or inaction has in other areas. There is a global decline in birth rates across the developed and urbanized societies, in which there is undoubtedly many contributing factors, like microplastics poisoning us, but consider the psychological factors. Cost of living crisis. Could you afford to feed, clothe, and provide for a child if you're already struggling? Housing crisis. Couldn't you provide stable and secure housing for children? Climate crisis. The environmental conditions are only going to get worse. Who would want to bring into a child into a world where survival is already a struggle and you know the situation is only going to get worse? The kids born today will live long enough to see the worst of climate change. They might even get to live through the collapse of human civilization. But instead of taking action to fix the problems, we'll just restrict abortion and drill, baby, drill. Maybe offer women a once-off payment to have a baby, but never actually address the systemic issues causing the problem. Why have kids if you have no hope for their future? And just as a bit of a side tangent about the so-called pro-life, listen to the words they say, as that gives them away. They want these babies to be born and have long, productive lives. Productive is the key word. Productive does not mean happy. Productive does not mean purposeful. Productive means produced value for the economy. They don't want human life, they want workers. After they're born, they don't give a shit about them. They're just blood for the economic machine. Suspicious segue, Mars as a plan B for climate change. Billionaire tools like Elon Musk want to colonize Mars and make humans a multi-planetary species, which is something I think is a worthwhile goal. However, his reasoning as to why makes the whole project ridiculous. It makes sense that if humans are multi-planetary, then no one singular disaster can doom the entire species. But using Mars as a backup in case humanity cannot survive climate change is fucking stupid. First of all, we're not going to survive anywhere else in the universe if we cannot survive sustainably on our own home planet. Second, even if you wanted to terraform Mars to make it more Earth-like, which I also think is a worthwhile goal, the technology required to do that does not exist. We only have concepts of how to do it. Even if we had the technology, the process would take centuries, and the best day on Mars would never be as good as Earth is right now. And a lot of the technology needed to fix Mars is the same technology needed to fix the Earth. And all of our resources and infrastructure is already here. Why would you not focus on fixing the Earth first? If we cannot control climate change here, what makes you think we can control a much greater climate change on Mars? It's just a billionaire fantasy to escape a planet they are actively killing. Semi-related to that is the necessity of big government. Grand projects like space exploration only occur in nations with big governments. They're just too expensive for the private sector to ever make profitable. But liberal democracy has demonized the idea of big government. A government big enough to give you everything is big enough to take it all away from you. That's why we need small, efficient government. The thing is, even a small government is big enough to take everything away from you. But a small government is an ineffective regulator against big business. Small governments don't have the resources to go after the biggest tax cheats and welfare frauds, but they've got just enough resources to go after you. Don't fall for the psyop. Big government isn't inherently a bad thing. Like any government, it all depends on what it does with its authority. Big problems require big regulations and big governments to enforce them. And given recent events, governments must be secular. Religions will use God to justify atrocities, and religions in charge of governments have a much greater means of enacting them. Theocracies have a terrible track record for the treatment of women and girls, and the US and Israel attacked Iran unprovoked in an attempt to start Armageddon, meaning the end of the world and the second coming of Jesus Christ. That's why they had no long-term plan. The evangelical Christians thought they'd bomb Iran and then Jesus would come back and God would fix everything according to their scriptures. Secular governments don't pull that religious shit. They're meant to protect against it. Keep religions in their places of worship and out of government. Your God does not get a vote. Since I'm now talking about politics, I want to address the notion of country first. America first, Australia first, I've even seen a New Zealand first movement. They claim to be against immigration and foreign aid on the grounds of taking care of our own people first, but the reality is they don't want to help anyone. They don't even want policy changes to lift their own people out of poverty. It's just a disguised excuse to be racist. First of all, putting your own country first is the default position. There's a reason why in an airplane emergency, when the oxygen masks drop, they tell you to put your own mask on first before assisting your children. You can't help others if you are incapacitated. Having to highlight Australia first just makes you look like a fucking selfish asshole who only cares about themselves. Or worse, it's used to justify the unjustifiable. Look at what the US did to Venezuela. They took military action against a sovereign nation in an imperialist act of aggression, kidnapping a sitting president and extrajudicially extradited him. For what? To secure their oil resources for US companies, which is literally the modus operandi of colonialism. Why? America first. You have resources they want, and their wants come first. The international rule of law be damned. And the response from the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has been pathetic. The man is a spineless coward. We're committed to the international rule of law, but won't say a word out of turn if it's an ally that's breaching it. I would ask, wants to stop the US from blackbagging him to get a better deal on Australian resources, but the truth is they already get everything they want from us. We give freely what they're taking by force from Venezuela. We're just a colony to the American empire, and our electoral choices are between the cowards of Labour who won't stand up for us, or the Liberal collaborators who will cheer on the atrocities of the empire. Both sides compete to be the biggest bootlickers. The US just set the precedent that wars for territory and resources are acceptable. Even kidnapping foreign heads of states is okay if you have the military power to pull it off. Might makes right is the global order again. And the danger there is that there will always be a bigger fish, someone that's willing to go a step further than you. Any moral standing they might have had in defending Ukraine from Russia is gone. And if China takes this opportunity to seize Taiwan, then the US will be responsible for returning the world to the age of empires. Although if China doesn't act on Taiwan, then they will become the steady hand that the world will turn to for global leadership. The US has shot itself in the dick, metaphorically speaking. The world order is changing and American hegemony is coming to an end. Although I'm not sure the American people will realize that. They don't seem to have much of an awareness of the world outside of their borders. They'll say shit like, white people are like this, black people are like that, as though their cultural stereotypes apply to everyone on the planet. The United States is main character energy if it were a country. The world is just a TV show and they are the star. The rest of us are just NPCs and whatever happens to us just becomes a talking point for them. It usually revolves around why they think their nation is better, if they care enough at all to discuss it. They have to poll their audiences first to see if something actually matters. What odds do your prediction markets give? We in Australia witnessed it firsthand after the Bondi Beach mass shooting, when the American gun culture sickness was on full display. And it is a sickness. You romanticize and fetishize guns to a disgusting degree. Americans immediately began claiming that it happened because we gave up our guns, that if more people had guns it wouldn't have been as bad, and that the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is with a good guy with a gun. All of which is fucking bullshit. Firstly, most of the guns that were surrendered were relics that soldiers brought home from World War II. They were put in sheds and left to rust. but they were still dangerous because they could have been made into firing condition. It wasn't the equivalent of brand new Glocks or AR 15s that were given up. Second, more guns lead to more gun usage. We don't have daily mass shootings. Our kids don't live in fear of being shot at school. Aussie kids don't need to learn active shooter drills. The reason why Bondi was such a big deal to us is because this doesn't happen here. Thirdly, it was a good guy without a gun that took down the bad guy with a gun. And the way we tell who the good guys with guns are is that they're the ones wearing badges and uniforms, which may not make sense to you as your police will shoot you for being black on a Tuesday, or ICE will shoot you because they feel threatened. That's my purse, I don't know you. Guns don't make you tough, they make you fucking cowards. But American gun culture is not going to change. The debate was over after Sandy Hook. You'd already had school shootings and collectively decided that your kids being killed was an acceptable sacrifice to protect your precious guns. It was only a matter of determining how young was too young. After Sandy Hook and your babies getting killed and still nothing changed, there was no such thing as too young. And the thing is, there is a geopolitical reason why your lawmakers would not want your gun culture to change. Your nation is effectively uninvadable. Even if a foreign military managed to overcome your military's defenses and occupy your country, they would face constant attrition from guerrilla attacks from the heavily armed civilian population. That's why the only threat to you is terrorism and nuclear weapons. You may be uninvadable, but September 11 showed that you are not invincible. And after Venezuela and now Iran, how many nations now think they need the nuclear deterrent to keep you at bay? There's a reason why you haven't tried regime change in North Korea. This is the world you are creating. While I'm on the topic of American politics, I have spoken previously about MAGA being a cult of personality around Donald Trump. Now I think I've figured out the mindset of his followers, and it goes along with religiosity. They're the kind of people who think professional wrestling is real. Not necessarily the people who watch and enjoy it, but the ones who believe all the drama, characters, and storylines are real. Literally, they saw him on professional wrestling, and that's all it took. They think the kayfabe is real, and they're taking the left-right, blue-red tribalism to an extreme degree. They're fans of Trump because he is their heel. He's their bad guy. It doesn't matter that his policies are a punch in their face, as long as the libs and Democrats get punched twice. Not only do they think their opponents think the same way, but they also think they started it when the country elected the babyface Obama. And they're kind of right. Obama is idolized despite being a standard establishment Democrat. He pledged to close Guantanamo Bay within his first 100 days in office, but even in 8 years he never actually did it. Even with a veto-proof supermajority, he didn't even try to implement a universal healthcare program, instead going with the Affordable Care Act, which was a right-wing Republican plan that just subsidizes private health insurance. The left loves Obama for the same reason the right hates him, because he's black. Trump is their revenge. The shit his ICE Gestapo is doing is payback for the pain and indignity inflicted upon them by having a black president in the White House. While they think Trump's kayfabe is real, they don't quite comprehend that the consequences of what he does will be very fucking real too. There's not going to be a return to normal if you manage to get a Democrat back in the White House. The damage is done. Your global reputation is destroyed. The United States has proven to be an unreliable ally. The only good news about this is that Trump is a one-of-a-kind. MAGA only follows him. They've tried with other characters like War Man, leader of the war fighters, personal assistant of war. But it doesn't work. Nobody else can get away with what he does, and when he's gone, there will be nobody who can shield them from accountability. It will just be a matter of finding someone who's willing to hold them accountable. A quick message directly to Donny Boy himself. Do you think you can trick God into letting you into heaven? Do you think a Nobel Prize is a get into heaven free card? Do you think trying to force God's hand to start Armageddon is something that he would reward? Just something to think about. One last thing I want to touch upon before moving on is generational differences. It's something I've discussed before and will undoubtedly do so again because it's a really important aspect to global democracy. There have always been generational differences. We have evidence of complaints about kids these days going back centuries. But we have no naming convention when it comes to different generations, which has led to the horribly dystopian generations Alpha and Beta. The reason why there is no naming convention is because it was only recently in our history that we even began recording human beings as being in distinct generations. And that has largely occurred because of two events: World War II, with the deaths of 70 million people, which was followed by a subsequent population explosion. A baby boom. The baby boomers were the largest generation in recorded history, bigger than any before or since. And from the time they started voting, they have determined the course of global democracy because of their sheer number advantage. But now they are aging and dying off. And just last year in 2025, we in Australia had the first federal election in decades be decided by a generation other than the baby boomers. The 2025 election was determined by millennials, which saw a large majority shift to the Labour Party and the utter collapse of the Liberal Party. Incidentally, just as the Liberal Party was collapsing, they elected their first ever female leader as the sacrificial lamb. Who better for them to blame than a woman? The point of this being that the baby boomers have had their time. They've taken Gen X's time as well, and now Gen X politicians seem to want to keep the boomers' neoliberal business as usual going. But millennials want change. We want a better world. Not just better for us, but better for everyone who comes after us too. The opportunity for change is here. What we need now is a vision for what that change could be, and the chance to vote to make it a reality, both of which we are currently lacking.